The days blurred together as Helen's desperation grew, a constant ache that consumed her thoughts. She found herself constantly searching for a way forward, her mind racing with possibilities that she knew she should dismiss. The idea of a sperm donor had crossed her mind, but the thought of a child that wasn't Evan's felt like a betrayal of the love they shared. And the thought of an affair, of seeking intimacy outside her marriage, filled her with a deep, visceral shame. She couldn't bear the thought of hurting Evan, the one person who had stood by her through it all. Evan, ever the supportive partner, sensed Helen's growing distance. He would reach for her hand, his eyes pleading, "Talk to me, Helen. What can I do to help?" But the words she needed to say were trapped behind a wall of guilt and uncertainty. How could she confess her darkest thoughts, her willingness to consider actions that would shatter the foundation of their marriage? The very idea made her stomach twist with nausea. Helen knew that her options were limited, each one fraught with moral and emotional complications. The thought of a sperm donor, while more conventional, felt hollow and impersonal. She wanted a child that was truly hers and Evan's, a living embodiment of their love. And the idea of an affair, of seeking intimacy outside her marriage, filled her with a sense of shame and betrayal that she couldn't bear to confront. As the days turned into weeks, Helen's desperation only grew. She found herself consumed by the desire for a child, a longing that had become an all-consuming need. The emptiness she felt, the ache in her heart, was a constant companion, a weight that threatened to crush her spirit. Evan, ever the patient and loving husband, continued to reach out, his eyes filled with concern and a desire to understand. But Helen couldn't bring herself to open up, to share the dark thoughts that had taken root in her mind. The fear of shattering the foundation of their marriage, of betraying Evan's trust, was simply too great. Noel, Evan's young nephew, arrived during a tumultuous time to stay with them for a few weeks. The 22-year-old was a striking presence, with unruly dark curls and piercing green eyes that seemed to peer into one's soul. His infectious laughter and boundless energy brought a much-needed distraction from the heavy cloud hanging over the household. Noel's visit had been a last-minute decision by his parents, who were overseas for work and couldn't find anyone else to care for him. Evan readily agreed, knowing how much the young man meant to Helen. Noel was like a son to them, and they couldn't bear the thought of him being alone. As Noel settled in, Helen found herself torn between relief and anxiety. His joyful spirit was a balm for her weary soul, but she feared her own emotional fragility might dampen his stay. Yet Noel, ever perceptive, seemed to instinctively understand the weight upon the household. Noel made a conscious effort to lift their spirits, regaling them with tales and cracking jokes that had them in stitches. His infectious laughter was a stark contrast to the heavy cloud enveloping Helen and Evan, and she found herself increasingly drawn to his vibrant presence. In Noel's company, the weight on Helen's shoulders seemed to lighten. His carefree spirit was a welcome distraction, a reminder that life could still hold moments of joy, even in the darkness. It was as if, in his presence, the walls around her heart began to crumble, allowing her to glimpse a future beyond the endless cycle of disappointment. As the days passed, Helen found herself captivated by Noel's youthful charm and unwavering optimism. She would catch herself stealing glances, admiring the way the sunlight played across his features or the way his eyes crinkled with laughter. There was a hidden magnetism to Noel that Helen found both alluring and unsettling. And then, a thought took root in Helen's mind, a seed that began to grow and flourish. Noel was young, healthy, and full of life, the perfect candidate to help her conceive the child she so desperately wanted. The idea consumed her, a glimmer of hope in the darkness that had enveloped her life. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Helen began to subtly shift her interactions with Noel. She found herself seeking out his company more often, engaging him in deeper conversations, and sharing her dreams of motherhood. She would catch his gaze and hold it, her eyes pleading, hoping to see a flicker of understanding in his youthful features. As the days passed, Helen's resolve only grew stronger. Noel's presence had become a beacon of hope, a reminder that the future held the possibility of new life. She knew the request she was about to make was unorthodox, even taboo, but the desperation that had taken hold of her heart left her with little choice. This was her last chance, her final hope for the family she had always yearned for. One evening, as they prepared dinner together, Helen broached the subject. "Noel," she said, her voice low and intimate, "I've been thinking a lot about our conversation the other day. About what I asked of you." She paused, gauging his reaction. "I know it's a lot to ask, but you're the only one I trust. You're so full of life, so vibrant. I think you could be the answer to my prayers." Noel's eyes widened, and Helen could see the conflict playing out on his face. "Aunt Helen, I don't know what to say," he stammered, his brow furrowed in deep thought. Helen reached out and grasped his hand, her touch gentle yet purposeful. "Just think about it, Noel. Please. This could be the chance for me to have the family I've always wanted. The chance for you to be a part of something so special." The air grew thick with the weight of her words, the implications of what she was asking. Noel remained silent, his gaze locked with hers, as Helen held her breath, waiting for his response. After a long, tense moment, Noel spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Aunt Helen, I don't know if I can do this. It's such a big thing to ask of me." He paused, his eyes downcast. "I mean, you're talking about me helping you have a child. That's a huge responsibility, and I'm not sure I'm ready for it." Helen squeezed his hand, her eyes pleading. "Noel, please. I know it's a lot to ask, but you have to understand how much this means to me. I've been trying for years, and it's been tearing me apart. I can't go on like this, living without the family I've always wanted." Noel's brow furrowed, and Helen could see the wheels turning in his mind. "But Aunt Helen, what about Evan? Wouldn't this be a betrayal of your marriage? I don't want to come between you two." Helen shook her head, her expression resolute. "Evan and I have been through so much together. He's been my rock, my constant support. But this is something I need to do, for myself, for us. I know it's not conventional, but I'm running out of options." Noel remained silent, his gaze shifting between Helen's desperate eyes and their intertwined hands. The weight of her request hung heavy in the air, and Helen could see the conflict raging within him. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Noel spoke, his voice soft but determined. "Aunt Helen, I'll do it. I'll help you have a child. I can't imagine how difficult this must be for you, but if this is what you truly want, then I'll be there for you, every step of the way." Helen felt a surge of relief and gratitude, her eyes brimming with tears. "Oh, Noel, thank you. Thank you so much. You have no idea what this means to me." She pulled him into a tight embrace, her heart racing with a mixture of hope and trepidation. As they held each other, the air thick with the weight of their decision, Helen knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. But in that moment, all that mattered was the promise of a new life, a chance to fulfill the deepest desires of her heart.